Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And today we have special guest, writer, director Timothy Stevens from his upcoming new movie called Ghost Lights. Timothy, thank you for being our guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Like I told you just we went live. I really enjoyed this film, and I look forward to talking about it. For everybody out there, The Ghost Light is going to be available on digital August 26th. It is coming to the Terror Films channel on September 2nd, and then coming to the Kings of Horror on September 9th. So those are the dates and places where you guys can check out The Ghost Lights. So let's get started on this. The Ghost Lights is sort of based on this Texas urban legend of the Marfa Lights.
Correct. Well, and it's more than an urban legend. It's a real thing. I
Okay.
guess the legends are around what it could possibly be, but it's a if you went out to Marfa right now and hung out for a couple of days, you'd probably see them. So
All right. Well, to all the stories that have been told about these lights, how accurate did you want the film to be to the various stories that are out there?
yeah, the whole inspiration for this project was actually a paranormal documentary TV pilot that I worked on. It was around 2019, I think, and unfortunately, like most TV pilots, they don't really amount to anything. You
Yeah.
you do a lot of work and you get everything lined up, and then something gets in the way, and the studio decides to go with something else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So but as part of that, I did a lot of research, and I talked to people on the ground in Marfa, and I actually spoke with one man in particular who said that he had an up close encounter with one of these lights, which is interesting because most people see him a mile or 2 miles away,
Uh huh.
and for him, it was an extremely traumatic event. And he had a hard time talking about it, and it was really he was going to be like one of the main people we interviewed for the show, but that hesitancy and that fear really, as a narrative filmmaker, inspired me to be like, well, what the hell could these things be? Like, if
Hmm.
they're scaring people, they're not just a interesting roadside attraction, then what could they be? So we have certainly taken some liberties, but I would say what we put in the film, in a lot of ways, is a direct adaptation of what this man told me he experienced, in some ways. And then, of course, we, as you want to with the narrative
Of
film, you
course.
kind of take your own creative liberties with it. But it all started from basically this man saying, I saw it from 2 feet away, and it was terrifying. And that
Wow.
was, yeah. And I mean, I get chills talking about it
I can
because
imagine.
this guy, you know, a credible individual when you speak to them,
Yeah.
and when you're scared and you don't want to talk to media, that's a good indication that something happened.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Now, the story is about a father daughter and a grief that is taking place in these characters' lives. Now, the Marfa Lights and the legend and the stories behind it. How difficult was it putting the story of the father daughter journalist trying to cover a story with the Marfa Lights, the ghost lights, as sort of the encompassing background theme of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I strive to do with everything that I work on. Is I try to find the human element and the heart element of it, and so what, the Ghost Lights, kind of the elevator pitch is, Alexandra is a journalist from Dallas. She goes off to New York City. And she comes back home after the death of her father, who is also a journalist. And as she's looking through kind of his discarded things, she finds this mysterious cassette tape labeled "The Ghost Lights, October 15th, 1978."
Mm-hmm.
And she finds an old Walkman, puts it on, and it's this conversation between her father interviewing this man, who lives in the ghost town Terlingua, which is a really cool, real place. who had this experience with these lights, and it was traumatic. And she decides, kind of in an effort to sort of after death make amends with her father and kind of connect with the memory of him, she goes on a cross state road trip listening to the tape, gathering this information and hopefully uncovering the truth. But as she does, these terrifying things start to happen, weird things start to happen, and it
Hmm.
gets very kind of X-Files
Oh
esque.
yeah.
Yeah, and but the heart of it really is the regret that we have from not connecting with our loved ones until often it's too late.
Yes.
And I mean, I think everyone has experienced that on some level, and I think 2020, like when we filmed this, that also spawned a lot of that, where people suddenly were like, I there's so many things I could have said and done differently, but that opportunity was taken away from me.
Time is taken for
um
granted.
yeah, and and so she's trying the impossible, which is to amend that after the fact.
Well, that leads me to my next question. I mean, it's up to the viewer's interpretation, but when you were writing this story, did you? I mean, what did you feel? Did you feel Alexandra was trying to make her father proud, or was it the journalist in her chasing a story?
I think it's a combination of that. She has a lot of self doubt, and as all of us writers
Hmm.
do, right? And yeah, so part of it is trying to basically make daddy proud, and because she feels like she's fallen so far short of his. Um, she feels like she's in his shadow in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. But then the other part of it is, and I think this is something that I always experience when I'm investigating a story, whether it's like a nonfiction sort of thing that's inspiring a fiction
Hmm.
in this case, is that I get really obsessed with something, and there's a certain tipping point to where that obsession becomes magnetic, and I can't do anything but pursue it.
Hmm.
It's taking me by the throat basically, and it's dragging me against my will sometimes.
I totally get it.
Um, and I think that's in a way that's what the ghost lights are doing to her. It's what, and you'll see it. It's an arc that both characters go on in the film. Is that it's really hooking them by the gut, and I
Yeah.
think that's even a line I wrote into the script, and it's dragging them as if they've been pulled into like the gravity of a planet, and now they're in the what is in Star Trek the beam, the tractor beam,
Yeah.
and now for better or for worse, they're sucked into it, and they're going to see it through to the end.
And that's very prominent in several scenes, but we don't want to give any spoilers away. But one person asks another person, "Where are these lights seen?" And he warns him, "I'm not, I'm not going to tell you. You don't want to go chasing after these." And for me, that was like opening up temptation even more. Telling somebody you can't, it's not good, it's dangerous. That's just
Right?
going to pique the curiosity even more.
Yeah.
And it speaks into that magnetic gravity like you were just talking about. Now, this film was, it said it was shot over a 10-day period and shot in sequence. Why was it important for you to shoot this in chronological sequence?
Well, a couple of things, probably primarily it was budgetary, as this film, for the most part, we did do a crowdfunding campaign for post production and stuff, but, initially it was all out of my own pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And, as an indie filmmaker, what that means is that you've got to have this schedule. Schedule is what drives budget, right? So if you're on a short schedule, it's going to be cheaper, usually. But, the practically, I always like it when, and I think actors appreciate this too, because you think about Lord of the Rings, they shot that in such a crazy mixed up order, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just how the special effects and the availability of locations and people demanded.
And not only that, I believe they shot all three films at the same
At the
time.
same time,
Yeah.
so like Frodo went from being, rosy cheeked and naive, to scenes where he's like supposed to have been in Mordor for
Yeah.
a year or something. And and that's a good challenge. But I think actors appreciate when you give them a real time sequence and you can actually, experience, in this case, a road trip in real time, and you can kind of make your arc over the course of days. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting journey that I think actually doesn't happen that much because especially when you're on like larger shooting schedules that really demands that you shoot out of order. So I liked giving Katriva Phillips, in this case the actress that plays
Alex.
Alex, the opportunity to kind of go on that journey
Yeah.
more or less in the order of the script, which it was kind of fun, but it also was really satisfying for us as filmmakers because once we hit the climax of the film, like we were done,
Yeah.
and it felt kind of like we had all actually been on a journey, which we had. I mean, really, we started in Dallas and we ended 700 miles away in Ghost Town, Terlingua. So
Wow.
it was a literal kind of quest we all went on,
And you're absolutely right with in regard to the actor aspect of it. They really do appreciate it, and it also keeps them focused on the story itself. If it's done, I mean, it can't always be done.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's necessary to shoot it out of order, but it's very important when it comes to keeping the actors engaged with the story as well. It comes through in their performances. You did a fantastic job stretching the dollar with the ghost lights. Was there any particular aspect of the film that you were very upset that you had to compromise on due to budgetary constraints?
I mean, very upset. I mean, I wrote it how I wanted to make it, and I've written plenty of scripts that I did the budget on afterwards, and ultimately we just didn't do the film because it was just too expensive,
Yeah.
And I wrote this with budget in mind, but I think one thing that would have been really cool is maybe doing some reenactments for this. And I mean, we shot it. This is kind of a hybrid feeling film. It feels
Yeah.
like half narrative, half documentary, which is actually kind of my background as a filmmaker, is half narrative, half documentary. So I kind of like combined some of that
Hmm.
aesthetics in this. And and in documentaries, sometimes you want to do like
A reenactment, a dramatization.
recreation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that would have been cool, but also I was really inspired by this film that I always blank on the name. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's about a UFO encounter in the 1950s in this like little New Mexico town, the Vast of Night.
Okay.
And the Vast of Night does a really interesting thing several times, but specifically the main characters who are like basically trying to get a radio story recorded on like a reel to reel tape go to this woman who has experienced something, and she retells this like encounter experience, and they never cut away to the event,
Hmm.
and it's one shot. It's a long take. It's like 5 to 6 minutes long, and the camera just gets closer and closer and closer and closer to her. And when I saw it, once that was over, I realized what had happened is basically I had imagined everything that she said in my head
Hmm.
the same way I would if I were hearing someone tell a story around a campfire. And I was like, can I cuss on this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit. Like that's a fucking magic trick.
Absolutely.
you
And you know
know?
what? I didn't even
Um
think of it until you just I mean, I'm a big fan of reenactments,
yeah.
dramatization of scenes. And as I was watching this film and the way the interview scenes were done, which were in black and white, I didn't feel a longing for, oh man, I wish I could see this because the way you shot it compensated. I guess that's the best word I can use.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to try that, but on a really large scale. I wanted to take what they did in the Vast of Night and see if we could do a lot of it. And because we are storytellers, and I think something really interesting happens when we engage a story, especially in a kind of very old school traditional like word of mouth format, is
Yeah.
that you start to form images.
Yeah.
It's kind of why films like the original The Haunting, made in was it like the late '60s, black and white.
Yeah.
You never see a ghost once in that
No.
film, but it's more terrifying because you start imagining
Yeah.
as the viewer what that might look like. And I think that's so much scarier. And it actually it's more interesting to me, to it almost makes the film interactive in a way, which is because we give you something and you start giving back, and it becomes like an experience that is different for everyone that watches it.
I've got a question because you did write and direct this film. Does that process of what you just talked about, does it happen when you're writing the script or when you're directing the actors?
Probably a little bit of both, I
Okay.
imagine. I mean, ultimately, in Billy Blair, the actor that
Mm-hmm.
plays Mario, who's really delivering most of these kind of
Mm-hmm.
like storytelling scenes. A lot of people know him. He was in both Sin Cities. He's
Mm-hmm.
been in both Machete films. I think he like takes like a machine gun and guns down Robert De Niro in the first Machete. But anyway, um, I honestly I gave him a Herculean task to memorize all these stories, and honestly, like he couldn't. It was no one really could do this. Yeah, a stage actor would have a challenge with this, and so what happened was is that we had a script, and then he would take a moment to kind of internalize that script, and then he gave us a story that largely hit the beats that we were going for, but it became like a performance at that
Yeah.
point, and in a bit of originality. I think if you were to compare the script to actually what made it to the screen, you'll see a lot of similarities because he is a very good actor.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be sections where he just kind of told it like it was an experience, and I think that was really cool. So a lot of that did come out in the I don't even want to say direction. I want to say like
Great
that was
casting.
that was Billy. Like
Yeah.
he's the one that almost became a co-writer in
Yeah.
this in some
Yeah.
ways.
That storytelling was phenomenal. Now, besides the past scenes being shown to us in black and white, and the delivery of the story, were there any other things that you brought us in those sequences where we're in the past, 1978, the stories being told to an interviewer, the monologues that are going on, the storytelling? What else did you do to add to the essence of those moments?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. We shot this in 10 days. And the only thing we didn't shoot in order is we shot all of those flashbacks,
Yeah.
on the same day because that made sense. I wanted to bring Billy out to Terlingua and like film in like a real saloon out there because there are some real Wild West saloons out that way. But it made sense to do that locally. But um, you know, one, and I think this goes back to my documentary background, is that I didn't storyboard any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, we had two cameras and we set them up. And one was on Arthur, one was on Mario. And and I didn't really even tell my camera operator, I said, I want you to respond to the actor. So if he starts to get really intense, do something with the camera that
Yeah.
responds to that, almost like a choreography sort of dance, like some improvised dancing. And I think, and hopefully this answers your question. I think what that does is that it gives this kind of like visceral
Mm-hmm.
quality to some of those moments where he's recalling the most traumatic moments
Yeah.
of this experience, and the camera is it's totally unplanned. It's just it's happening, and it's a live wire, in that way.
Wow.
And we didn't really have to do take twos for the most part, just because it you couldn't have made it any better,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
there's nothing better than just doing it and letting it be what it is,
Let the actors go and just put the camera right there. Now,
Yeah.
the audience is going to walk away, and I think this is your intention, with their own ideas because the lights are unexplained, the Marfa
Mhm.
lights in real life. So, in the Ghost Lights, the movie, when people watch this film and they walk away from it, some are going to think UFO, some are going to think paranormal, ghosts, and whatnot. Uh,
Mhm.
Are you happy with that, or do you want it to be like, no, no, it's not ghosts, it's aliens? You know what I mean?
What's that guy from Ancient Aliens? He's like
Yeah, yeah,
aliens.
aliens.
It's not aliens, but it's aliens. So I mean, it's purposefully ambiguous,
Hmm.
and I like a lot of films that do that. You know, I think about the ending of like The Witch, for
Oh
example,
yeah.
ends on a very big question mark. Now, if you watch it over and over again, you might start to pick up on what Robert Eggers was wanting to do there. But you know, if you try to find interviews and people ask him, "Hey, what happened at the end of that movie?" He just is quiet. He will not answer that
And
question.
for those people who don't remember, The Witch, and I saw it again recently, like last month. They gather up. She meets up with this circle of other women that all just start floating in the air, and
Yeah, that's the final scene,
it
and
is,
it ends with her like levitating in the
mm-hmm.
circle of the moon,
And just being
and
overwhelmed with joy.
yeah, laughing,
Hmm.
like yeah, well covered in blood, I think.
Yeah.
And I was so yeah, I was just so affected by that. And there's plenty of other movies that have that same uh, kind of ambiguous ending. But another thing that I really liked about that film is that it ramps up really hard,
Hmm.
and there's no post log to
Yeah.
it. It's a climax without a resolution.
Yeah.
You know, in traditional storytelling, right? You're supposed to. We all remember from English class that building action, it reaches the climax, and then we have you know like a in a movie 20 minutes of like kind of
A
coming down off of that,
resolution type of thing. Yeah.
yeah, wrapping things up. And you know the witch in the what's the other movie, Hereditary, they
Yes.
get to the climax and it rolls to credits.
Hmm.
And it I don't know, maybe it's like the like punk rocker in me, like I really like that, you know. I like it, almost feels like a middle finger to just like give no resolution.
Go
And
against the grain. Yeah.
you know, and but it also does something interesting when you usurp the traditional flow and the expectation of a story. You're kind of left thinking about what just happened. And if you start thinking long enough, you'll start to kind of absorb some of these themes, you know,
Yeah.
that I think a good horror film can have, which you know there's always a deeper level to every horror film. Even the goriest slasher films are
Hmm.
trying to tell you something, you know. um, so yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. I know what I think happened in the Ghost Lights. I know what I know what really happened, but I also think that doesn't delegitimize any other
Yeah,
interpretation. You know,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I have my opinions as well. Now, the ending, which we're not going to give away, did you want it to end and roll to credits on the shock that you left me in?
Oh yeah,
Did
yep.
not see that coming.
Um, you didn't at all.
Mm-mm.
You were saying you didn't. That's awesome. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
that was. You know, we did. There were some scenes we couldn't storyboard, but we storyboarded everything, and that shot is storyboarded. That's the last shot is storyboard. That's the last line of the script. That's the. And I won't give it away, but the last shot is on a tape deck.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was meant to go out. So
Did you sort of go back and forth on whether you wanted to show the lights as opposed to showing the lights, maybe showing what the casting of the lights off Alex looks like?
oh, sure, sure.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, yeah, I certainly did. Yeah, and that was something that kind of in, you know, before I started writing, I was talking to John Francis McCullough, who is the co-producer on this film, but also plays Arthur. That
Mm-hmm.
was something we bounced around off each other of, you know, like how much should we show, how much shouldn't we show, and it's delayed as long as possible in the film, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But I ultimately we and you can see it in the trailer for a half second, you know, like it's there.
Yeah.
Although that's not the it's not the final scene.
No.
That's like
No.
that's another part. But excuse me. Yeah, so we definitely debated, and I think we just felt like, you know, you can only there's got to be some payoff, right?
Yeah,
Like in the end, we are fans of sci-fi and horror, and if you don't see some of the
something.
phenomena,
Yeah,
like you're kind of cheating
yeah,
the audience a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get it, and I want to thank you so much, Timothy, for coming on here and sharing these stories. Guys, please check out the Ghost Lights. You will not be disappointed. Again, it is coming out on digital on August 26th. Does that mean it's being released on DVD as well?
So what we're going to be doing is August 26th is like Tubi, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Microsoft Movies, a few other places. On the second, it goes up on YouTube for a live Q&A and live stream, and that's going to live there on the Terror Films channel. And then again on the ninth on Kings of Horror, same thing. We'll do a live stream, then it'll live there. However, I'm in the process. In fact, I just mailed off the master today to start purchasing some DVDs and Blu-rays.
Nice.
And what those are going to have that you won't find anywhere else is that we did make a special features reel that I've ultimately decided we're just not going to put online. It's going to live
Mm-hmm.
on the and as horror fans, we love our physical media, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to kind of um, help our fans out by giving them something
That's
special to
great.
that. So I will probably delay that for a bit because I do want to give the initial push
Yeah.
the most life that it can. So I would look towards the end of the year. We'll
Mm-hmm.
probably start posting links on our website for buying physical as well.
That's awesome. Guys, I cannot recommend this movie enough. It's called The Ghost Lights. Timothy here wrote it, directed it, even had a little small cameo in it as well.
I did. In fact, I've got the Man in Black hat
That's right. He
right
plays a
here. There
man
it
in
is.
black. You guys will definitely enjoy it. Again, a big thanks to our guest, Timothy Stevens. Timothy, do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
If you guys want to check our film studio out on social media, it's Spectrograph Films,
Yep.
and that's SPECTROGRAPH, and you'll probably see that in the description somewhere.
Yep.
We actually have three movies that are either almost completed, like The Ghost Lights. We have another film called Dead Hand that's an action comedy. Lots of stellar martial art in this film. In fact, the entire main cast are all martial artists who also happen to be actors.
Wow.
And this is going to feel kind of like blood sport. Like it's going to be like
Yeah.
high action, kind of Bruce Lee style martial arts. And then we actually also have a documentary that we're shooting right now, and will probably come out next year. That's called Dark Sanctuary, and it's about this incredible goth club here in Dallas that Marilyn Manson hung out, Trent
Wow.
Reznor,
I'm a
The
huge
Cure.
Nine Inch Nails fan.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he just like popped in one day,
Wow.
based on the reputation. Like he had
Yeah.
heard like this is if you wear black, go here. So yeah, we're working on that, and that's going to be kind of a long term
That's great.
project. So
That's
you
great.
can get updates on all those things. Check us out. Spectrographfilms.com is a good hub for all of that.
That's right. And on social media, just do a search for Spectrograph Films and you'll find it right there as well. Thank you to our guest, Timothy Stevens. Again, the movie is called Ghost Lights. On behalf, also want to thank our audience, those of you who are tuning in live and those of you who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Timothy and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.